All right. Thank you so much for everyone being here this morning. It is March the 4th, 11 o'clock a.m. Eastern. We are very excited here to listen to the preliminary defense of Jonathan Rizzo. Very excited for this process here. Jonathan has been working very hard. The title of the study is called Mobilizing Communities Against Homelessness, Intrinsic versus Intrinsic Motivators for Participation in Giving. This is a qualitative action research study out of Edgewood University, and I am the chair, Dr. Elena Desjardins. Jonathan, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Desjardins. Uh, and thank you for everyone else for being here. I'm Jonathan Rizzo, Doctorate of Business Administration student in finance at Edgewood University. This presentation outlines my qualitative action research study, Mobilizing Nashville Against Chronic Homelessness, Intrinsic versus Extrinsic Motivators for Participation in Giving. Again, my chair is Dr. Elena Desjardins. The project focuses on increasing sustained participation and recurring giving to support 0 to 30% AMI Nashvillians and permanent supportive housing outcomes. All right. This is a picture I'm in the right side of this protest here in this picture, so I wanted to share that. Um, an introduction of me. I come to this work from hands-on service in Nashville's homelessness response. Over time, I saw how transactional fundraising and awareness campaigns drive first actions, but not long-term engagement. This project combines my interest in motivation and leadership to design practical ways to help people show up, stay involved, and give again, grounded in dignity and housing first realities. My thank you to my committee, Chair Dr. Elena Desjardins, committee member Dr. Stephen Onu, and invited subject matter expert Dr. Beth Shin. Dr. Desjardins will guide the design and scholarship standards. Dr. Onu will help ensure rigor and feasibility, and Dr. Shin's subject matter expertise will keep the work aligned to evidence-based homelessness solutions. Um, The core problem uh, is a reliance on short-term appeals that spark one-off actions but fail to convert people into recurring givers or steady volunteers. In Nashville, Middle Tennessee, the gap is especially consequential. The hardest lift is at 0 to 30% AMI in permanent supportive housing operations. We need approaches that turn first actions into sustained participation that moves the PSH pipeline. We need to know what is working and what can be improved. Uh, the purpose of this study is to co-design, pilot, and iteratively improve leadership behaviors and messaging strategies that put intrinsic motives at the center, like autonomy, competence, relatedness, and identity and meaning, while using extrinsic cues sparingly as amplifiers. We plan to partner with 8 nonprofits across the Davidson County continuum of care to produce an immediately usable leader playbook or guide and agency briefs. We ask two things. How do intrinsic and extrinsic motivators interact with leadership behaviors, rituals, and framing practices to shape initial engagement, continued involvement, and recurring giving? And number two, what low-cost interventions can agencies implement within 3 to 6 months? The second question may be more difficult to evaluate using traditional grading rubric criteria because the expected outcomes are likely to be practical and developmental rather than strictly quantitative. I anticipate identifying low to no cost strategies such as check-in phone trees, recurring meeting structures, or brief Zoom check-ins that strengthen communication, coordination, and message clarity. In this study, I will be looking for evidence of improved communication patterns and more refined, consistent messaging across participants and organizations. This study seeks to identify practical steps to move beyond one-off fundraising tropes of belonging, purpose, and feedback loops that sustain involvement. It elevates leadership moves with sense giving and ritual design to activate intrinsic motivation. It aligns with extremely low income and participant, excuse me, and permanent supportive housing solutions and supports cross-agency coherence so efforts compound across the system. For me, this builds capabilities in qualitative action design, facilitation, and evidence-based leadership while producing a reusable playbook for Nashville and similar markets. It advances my long-term goal of connecting motivation science to real community outcomes of measurably increasing recurring giving, volunteer retention, and advocacy. This will help me take one step closer towards my goal of ending chronic homelessness in Nashville. We'll run plan, act, observe, reflect cycles over 10 to 12 weeks with purposive sampling across 8 agencies. Data sources include semi-structured interviews, small group message testing workshops, limited observation of orientations and events, artifact reviews of emails, landing pages, and acknowledging flows, and a short Likert survey to triangulate qualitative themes. Analysis uses thematic analysis, inductive and deductive codes from self-determination theory, Herzberg and Maslow, with cross-case synthesis by agency and audience segment. To ensure trustworthiness, we follow Lincoln and Gupta's work in triangulation with methods, roles, and artifacts, 2 rounds of member checking, peer debriefs, reflexive memos, and a maintained audit trail. I also want to note that confidentiality is especially important in a cross-agency study like this. I will de-identify participants and agencies as needed, store data on secure access restricted systems, and avoid sharing sensitive operational details across partner organizations unless I have explicit permission. We've selected a balanced cohort across the continuum of care and audience access. Room in the Inn to look at, we're working with, hopefully, working with Room in the Inn to look at belonging rituals and impact updates. Urban Housing Solutions to look at unit openings and retention proofs. Safe Haven Family Shelter for family-friendly on-ramps. Open Table Nashville for dignity forward messaging and micro asks. Oasis Center for dignity or identity aligned narratives, Nashville Launchpad for belonging and identity with privacy forward recognition, Park Center for role clarity and recovery to housing impact, and the Village at Glencliff to look at recovery to permanent supportive housing transitions and tour call to actions. To keep this feasible in 10 to 12 weeks, I'm using a minimum engagement plan for each partner. At least one leader interview, one staff or volunteer interview, and artifact review with optional workshop or mini survey participation. If fewer than 8 partners formally commit, I'll proceed with a smaller core cohort and use a contingency pool of organizations while maintaining standardized protocols for cross-case comparison. Our approach places intrinsic motives at the core of including autonomy, which is the choice of how to help, competence, showing clear roles with fast feedback, and relatedness with welcoming rituals, and identity and meaning with values aligned purpose. Uh, Extrinsic tools like time-bound matches, opt-in recognition, or tangible perks are amplifiers, not substitutes. We will pair low friction on-ramps with care kits, 10 to $15 a month, with rapid dignity forward updates that tie actions to pipeline milestones. This slide shows Nashville's 2025 point in time count snapshot. 1,578 sheltered, 602 unsheltered individuals, a total of 2,180, which is a net increase of 4.1% from 2024, with unsheltered down 123 people, which is 17%, and sheltered up 209 people, which is 15%, signaling a pressure shifting from signaling pressure shifting into the shelter system rather than reduced inflow. Remember, point in time count is a one night census where people slept. It does not report by income band, so these are not totals are not a subset of lower than 0 to 30% AMI. The AMI lens comes from the housing supply side. where the deepest gap is at the 0 to 30% AMI range, and many exits require permanent supportive housing. This slide underscores the scale and urgency. Our aim is to convert community goodwill into sustained participation that accelerates the permanent supportive housing pipeline of street outreach and navigation to lease up to 12-month retention. Uh, this diagram shows the permanent supportive housing pipeline from street outreach to lease up and retention. I'll use it to map supporter actions to specific milestones. For example, move-in kits connect to lease up, and small monthly gifts help support retention. Uh, if it, hel it helps audiences visualize how their engagement translates into permanent housing outcomes. For limitations, the results are the results may be context bound. There may be a self-selection bias. The brief survey is descriptive, not causal. The short horizon limits evaluation of long-term behavior change, um, and uh, and attribution to any single intervention is limited. Assumptions are that we'll have honest, reflective responses. 2 to 3 action cycles are feasible, and current artifacts are representative and test ready. Deliverables include motivator maps, a message stimuli library, participation pathways, and a leader playbook or guide, including recognition rituals, dignity-centered storytelling, friction reduction, and 30 to 60-day tests. The next steps are to finalize International Review Board, confirm agencies and scheduling, run the first cycle, member check, and move quickly to implementation. I'm highlighting the keystone sources used in this presentation with Deci and Ryan, Hertzberg, Maslow, Beckers, Wippig, uh, and Clary et al., Grant, Lincoln, and Guba, Dr. Shin and Kaduri, and Metro OHS, while the full APA list sits in the proposal and can be provided as an appendix if desired. Thank you. I'm happy to discuss details about agency selection, timelines, the survey, instrument, code,
Amazing.
or how we'll measure repeat action and monthly conversion. Thank you, Dr. D.
Great job, John. Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
madam.
Cheering you on. Awesome work. Take a deep breath. I know the first time with the preliminary defense, all of my students, candidates, they're super nervous, but you seem to be, very calm and run through the program very nicely. So I'm really, really thrilled about that. You worked really hard on this. We've been working together for since October, maybe something like that. Um, and I've seen this happen right before my eyes. You strategized, you researched, and you really found that the best piece to look at from a vantage point of the literature review. So I'll kick us off with a quick question. As you developed your literature review, Jonathan, I know there were so many different research articles, books, great sources that we're pouring in every single day. How did you create the best outline for yourself in the literature review? And was there any researchers that really stood out during your process of development?
Well, yeah, that may have been I know we didn't set this up in advance, that question, but obviously the number one for me is Dr. Beth Shin, who's on my defense committee here. She was my number one favorite source. She's done so much work.
And I did not ask this question. I promise you, there was no communication of this ahead of time.
No, Dr. Shin is a nationally renowned researcher and really has blazed a trail in terms of showing evidence-based work in her research and where it works in the world because that's a big problem when we're out, when you talk to people who are not necessarily activists or volunteers, not part of the housing discussion and working with the homeless. Uh, you get a lot of different feedback, and they say that the number one thing I think people say is that where does it work? How come, it doesn't, we can't do this anywhere. It's not possible. And I think Dr. Shin has clearly showed that it is possible, especially with the Finnish model, and why housing first is the best approach instead of maybe a stair-step model where you have to achieve certain results. It's really, focused or based in Maslow's work. That's why, again, Carl Maslow trailblazer much earlier in the hierarchy of needs. So yeah, safety basics are really at the bottom of this hierarchy, and then yeah, showing how it can work. Also, what is Wa Kuhn? Let me see, Walter. Let me try and find her name if you don't mind. Um, for just a minute, I'm going to stop sharing.
While you're
Another
looking,
one.
Jonathan, I'll chit chat a
Yeah.
little bit. You're so right on this. I we shared we live kind of close to each other, but not really. But we kind of can understand the geographical landscape, Northeast, right?
Yep.
Very busy, very urban, metropolitan, suburban, everything all at once. No matter if you drive 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there, everything's all at once. Housing's a real big problem where we live, and it's been a big problem for a long time. There is very populated towns and cities, and it creates a spiraling effect for people. And this has been a conversation that we had numerous times. So as you're looking for the literature researcher, I'll lean on to Dr. Shin or whoever else wants to jump in for any commentary. Good job, John.
Thank you very much, madam.
Well, thanks for all those kind words. A couple of questions for you, John. You're focused on donors and volunteers to these organizations when you talk about sustained participation. Is that right?
Yes, madam. The donors and volunteers, I think that's a big part of this, and the key to moving things forward.
Uh-huh. So what sort of baseline evidence do you have that donors are fickle or that volunteers, disappear?
Well, yep. So a lot of it is through my own experience. It's difficult to ask organizations about their fundraising, uh, some of the mechanics of their fundraising. You can get big, large, numbers, large scale numbers. It's tough to get details about specific donors. So it's anecdotal, I'd have to admit. Throughout my 8 to 10 years almost of working here in Nashville specifically, I've noticed that when I go out, for example, with the cold weather patrol with Open Table Nashville, and we bring people into the shelters, I noticed that I work with a lot of new people and a few that have been recurring, but over the 8 years, I don't know if only the staff of Open Table Nashville has really stayed the same over that entire time. Over the years, there have been several people that have, and this is specific volunteer talking about volunteering. There have been a number of people who have stuck with it for a few years, and I've seen at several events the that's my cousin Ashley. Thank you,
I'm so
Ashley. I'm
sorry.
so glad you're here
Can you,
with her daughter. Yeah, Vienna. I'm assuming. Um, so a few people have been there through the events, the fundraisers, the annual fundraisers, and helping in these volunteer events of bringing people to shelters or even getting ready for our day on the hill the other day. You see different people and you see who is there long term and who is there for maybe a few years. You see in the emails and when we're not as tightly knit, you kind of, it's a loose communication system. So from that, I gathered that it's not recurring. I think there's room for improvement, I should say, in the amount of recurring participation that we can see. Um, I think a lot of it has to do with communication and some of the rituals and stuff that I talked about. Hopefully, we'll study, but that's what we're going to hopefully find out and see
Mhm. Yeah.
in this study.
So volunteering, going out on a cold weather canvas, or in the case of Room in the Inn, opening up, the church and serving the meal and such, that's a higher lift than sitting at home and writing a check. Um, and I think it might behoove you to really try to, you're not going to get information about specific donors, but to get some sense from your organizations of the extent to which you have consistent donor participation, or you have this one-off sort of notion. Um, because kind of understanding the depth of your problem is really important to coming up with solutions to try to modify it. And the different organizations that you list, and it's a nice group because they have very different levels of volunteer participation that they're looking for. Some of them aren't really looking for volunteer participation. They're all looking for money. They all need money to carry on their operations. And some of them, I think a Room in the Inn in particular, really rely on volunteers to do stuff, and others, maybe Urban Housing Solutions, less so. So, um, so anyway, just thinking about trying to define your problem. Um, and then there's something of a challenge, I'll say, uh, to a short-term effort to improve long-term participation, and trying to understand to what extent, an 8 or 12 week effort carries fruit for the long term. So, do you basically have a survey of opinion there, or do you have markers that are predictive of long-term participation that might move within the time frame of your study?
Well, so first of all, I think you're 100% right on obviously that all of them don't necessarily need volunteers. A lot of them need fundraising. And those may be two different, they may seem, I think at the beginning or at the face value, they seem very different. I think they're more closely related than they might seem at first. I think that I think volunteers can be used also for the fundraising part of this. I think that's a big piece that's missing. And I think that a lot of the, corporate fundraisers may be a bigger part of their donation pool. And some funders and donors maybe make up more of the funding pool as well. I'm gonna have to find that out. I'm sure these organizations have all that information. Whether they're willing to share that or not is another question. But hopefully the security that I've talked about in this process will help ease their minds. Um, that's why as a doctorate of business administration student, I think that this is the degree is more about action and change in the world. It is more than just studying. So and again, back to my literature review question. Thank you, Dr. D. That Donna Walter Kuhn, her book in the Invitation to the Party. Um, yeah, she talks about giving and really a cultural responsive outreach, barrier removal, shared ritual, authentic representation in her work with the Dance Theater of Harlem. That was early on in my studies, in my bachelor degree in transpersonal psychology. That was a huge, a very impactful class and book for me about arts and social change. So now I wanted to really work towards making change in this way. I've been working more towards ending chronic homelessness in Nashville here. And so using this doctorate to do that, I think working with the volunteers and the money and specific ideas like again simple ideas like a phone tree, iterative processes, and check-in meetings on Zoom. I think a lot of these things, when you start just talking to people little by little, even if, phone tree is a simple idea from like, elementary school PTOs, it's real world stuff. It really works. Knocking on doors really works. That's a bigger lift, like you're saying. Volunteering is a bigger lift. But when it's just a phone call and you're talking about what's working, what's not, what are you doing these days, whether it's with donors or volunteers or among team members, I think that can be very impactful. And I think it may be missing some of that just basic communication. So hopefully those kinds of actions that we'll see how, to what extent these organizations are implementing strategies like that already. We'll start there with as a baseline, and then move forward with hopefully, a bit of implementation, and they can track ideally, or I'll be able to help them track these processes and what's working. And if it may lead to improving donor success with donors. Hopefully, those conversations will ultimately lead towards it. It's tough not to talk all about this stuff and not want to do something. I feel like so. I think that's a big part of it for me. I've noticed again, anecdotal, but I think I'm trying to pull what has worked for me. And what I would like to see work, and then in terms of markers throughout the study, you're right. That it is a very short-term study, so it's almost cross-sectional, and that's why the real goal here is the field guide. It's more than just the study and improving these organizations. They're maybe, Room in the End has been around for a while. They may be set in their ways, and that's okay. They're doing a great job. But for example, the other day, I was just at the coffee shop, and one of my friends started a new nonprofit. Her name is Sarah Chapman. It's the All Sorts Lobby. They've been around for just a year. And I said, well, yeah, well, I'm thinking about doing this study. Is that something that would help you, a field guide or playbook? She said, yeah, that would be great. I have no idea what I'm doing. I would love that. That would be incredible. Some kind of help like that. So I think that's the real goal, is to see what's working, what's not for these larger and more established organizations, and helping create a guide for new startups and other people. So as this grows, um, we
Mhm.
can multiply our efforts in our advocacy and our giving.
Mhm. Okay, thank you.
Yes, madam.
Thank you so much. I know Dr. Ono is not here, but we'll send him the transcripts and the recording of this session. I just want to emphasize how passionate you are, Jonathan, about this field, and I really love how you embrace this topic. But this is the first time conducting a study of this caliber, and even just reading the works of Cresswell and Poth and Yin and Cresswell. That's a big step at this level. So I want to thank you for embracing this topic, but also embracing learning about the methodological approaches that you will use to be able to conduct this study. So thank you, Jonathan. This was a really wonderful opportunity to hear about your intentions of your research study, and I'm really looking forward to what's yet to come. So
Thank
thank
you,
you.
Dr. D.
Have a wonderful afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming on. This is the closeout, March the 4th at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Jonathan Rizzo, thank you so much. We're looking
Thank you,
forward to
Dr.
the
D.
defense.
Thank you.
Jonathan, talk to you later.
Yep. Have a good day. Thank you, everybody else, for coming. Judy Tackett, April Calvin, gosh, my cousins. What a pleasure. My
We have a
mom,
fan
I think, is
club, John.
watching. Yeah. Well,
I love
there's
it.
some very esteemed people on this call, so it's a pleasure.
That's wonderful. Well, I'm
Thank you,
excited
Dr.
for you,
D.
Jonathan.
Thank you.
Great
Thank
job.
you. Talk to you later.
Bye, guys. Thanks, Bran.
Oh,
Love you.